Branding isn't just a logo, it's a mindset. A holistic approach shaping identities, experiences, and leadership at every level. Welcome to BrandsTalk with your host Brigitte Barkowski, where excellence meets purpose. We share insights and lessons to inspire and elevate. Let's dive in. My guest today is Pamela Thompson. Pamela is the founder of Female Wave of Change Canada, a national member-based nonprofit, and believes that female leadership holds the key to creating a better world. She's also president of Creative Life Coaching and Consulting. Pam is the author of 2 best-selling books and is soon to launch book number 3. Her books Learning to Dance with Life, a guide for high-achieving women, The Exploits of Minerva, Reflections of a 60-something woman, and Truth and Contradictions, Life-Changing Experiences Living and Working in Afghanistan, draw up her many lessons and transitions throughout life, including living and working on 5 continents, separation and divorce, burnout, and finding the love of her life. Pamela is passionate about sharing her insights, stories, and actionable strategies on how to navigate change, lead in uncertain times, and thrive in life and work. She continues to inspire and empower others on their journey globally through her experiential workshops, speaking, and writing. Pam believes that life is an adventure to be lived to the fullest and lives her life according to that mantra. I warmly welcome Pamela Thompson. Welcome to BrandsTalk.
Thank you so much, Brigitte. I'm very excited and thrilled to be here.
I'm excited and thrilled too, Pamela. It's great having you on my show today. You are on Vancouver Island, right? At the moment.
That's correct, yes.
In Canada, on the Pacific coast. I'm here in the heart of Europe. 9 hours are in between of us. And based on that, we're already truly global. But we also have some more that adds up to being a global person. We both have spent time and worked on 5 different continents, and you have taken away 25 years of managing and consulting in a variety of organizations and cultures, and you embraced leadership doing so. So what lessons have you learned in terms of leadership, but also in terms of understanding life and understanding of people in diverse cultures?
Well, that's a big question, Brigitte.
Yeah.
I'll share probably about 3 key lessons that I've learned, and I'll inject stories related to them to illustrate them, if I may.
That's wonderful.
So the first one is the power of co-creating and communicating a shared vision. Now, I was project director of a primary healthcare project in Nigeria, and we were on the ground with the design team, and this project was funded by a big donor to be implemented in 2 states, one in the Muslim north and one in the Christian south, and they were about 1,000 kilometers apart. And so I was on the ground with the design team working on the design within the broad project parameters for the implementation of this project over a 5-year time frame. And what I did is the design was, there were 8 of us, and my field manager and 3 of the team went off to the Christian state, and myself and the other 3 members of the team went to the Muslim state. And at the same time, concurrently, we facilitated workshops to get a better understanding of the key challenges these groups were facing, the strengths they had to build on, and their visions of where they wanted the project to take them in the next 5 years. So then we had each group identifying one person to represent them at a national workshop, and we supported them to do a PowerPoint with the key elements that were generated from the workshops in each state. Some people from each state were also part of that national workshop, and then other national stakeholders like government and national nonprofits were part of another workshop. So during that process at the national workshop, both teams shared their key elements and their visions. And at the end of it, one of them stood up, the head of policy and planning in the Muslim states stood up and said, "Brothers and sisters, I thought that we were so behind you. I thought that we were lagging in education. We were really considered backwards compared to your state. And when you shared your key challenges and your visions, they were almost exactly like ours." And it's so hard to believe. And I'm so looking forward to working collectively with you on this, because I realize we're coming from a very, very similar places. And at that point, it's like my heart just went out, and I was like, we've already formed a connection between these two states that thought that they were worlds apart. And so that was one. So the second lesson is follow your heart and listen to your gut. And this, to me, was a really big lesson, because many of us, Brigitte, I feel like we were raised to believe that our left logical brains were really, really important, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what happened is I started a coaching business after I studied life and business coaching. In 2008, I started a coaching business, and I had a network of coaches in Canada and the States in 2009, and we were coaching people through a variety of life transitions, men and women. And about 18 months in, I was so restless, and I was feeling, we weren't making the impact I wanted us to fast enough, and we weren't getting the ROI that I had hoped for. Anyway, I decided to take this body-centered coaching program to get out of my head and into my body. And it was the last class, and it was via teleconference. And the facilitator coach was asking for a volunteer to demo this body-centered decision-making process. No one was putting up their hands, so finally I put up mine, and I said, well, if no one else is going to do it, I will do it. And she said, find a line on the floor and think about something that you really, really want. Now, notice any negative feelings, emotions, or words that come up for you. And imagine each one of those as rocks in your knapsack on your back, and feel them weighing you down. Now release them and let them go. Now cross that line however you wish. Walk across it, run across it, leap across it, and say aloud what you want. So I leapt across that line, Brigitte, and I said aloud, I want to play big. Within two weeks, I received an email offering me to throw my hat into the ring for one of 3 senior level positions in Afghanistan. And one had my name written on it, Senior Technical Advisor, Strategic Planning and Performance Measurement. This is the kind of work I used to do. So I talked to my husband and said, I really want to do this. It was a 9-month contract. It wasn't in and out. It was 9 months in Kabul, working with the Ministry of Public Health. And so within a week, I threw my hat into the ring. Within 2 weeks, I was part of the interview process. So this all started, the email, in middle of August. By middle of October, I was on the ground in Afghanistan, having signed a 9-month contract. It was that powerful. So that just illustrates when we get out of our heads and into our bodies and ask the universe basically for support, amazing things can come to us. Absolutely. That we never envisioned. And you'll never guess what that line on the floor was, Brigitte. You'll never guess. Oh. It was an Afghan prayer mat that one of my technical team in Pakistan a few years before had gifted me. Does that not just give you goosebumps?
It's kind of, can I say that, synchronicity? It's something that aligns here very well. I mean, there's so much meaning in this story, and especially, we are conditioned of playing small. And we are holding back with our thoughts of playing small, and it's really heavy, right? And by just crossing that line or jumping across it and letting free and say, I want to play big, there is so much power in that. And the result showed in 2 weeks after that?
Yes.
You went on this mission to Afghanistan? Oh my God, I'm getting chills. And now, what was your experience working with, I suppose, women in Afghanistan? How was that? How did you experience that?
Well, I won't tell you too much because that's part of my new book, right?
Oh, okay, so just a little bit. So let's jump to the book. The book is called Truth and Contradictions, Life-Changing Experiences Living and Working in Afghanistan. So it's going to be launched early 2025, right? So
It's
just share
actually
a little
probably
bit.
it's probably going to be more like spring of 2025 now.
Okay.
I'll tell you a little bit. The
Yeah.
first part of the book, it's creative nonfiction. So that gives me liberties. And I'm writing through Minerva, who I wrote through in my second book. And the first part is Minerva is partly autobiographical, and she's partly a muse who came to me about 25 years ago when I was riding on a bike trail. And I didn't write about her, I pushed her down, and then she came back about, 4 years ago. And then I wrote through her in my second book. So anyway, so the first half of the book is really about, told through the eyes of Minerva, is really largely about me and my experience as an outside consultant going into work in a war zone, in a Muslim country in a war zone. And I actually worked with the Ministry of Public Health. So it was much bigger than women. It was for the country. I worked for the Ministry of Health for the country to help them develop their first strategic plan and built the capacity of internal teams to do planning. And so I was assigned a strategic planning team. So anyway, and I used very participatory processes. So the first part of that book is the scary bits of working in a war zone, like suicide bomb attacks going off across the road, and the funny things, the playful things that happen, because they did. So the first half of the book is about that. And the second half of the book is based on in-depth interviews I did with colleagues. And within the last 6 to 8 months, men and women that I worked with, but also friends and friends of theirs. And I had to be very careful to preserve and protect their identities. So I changed everyone's name, and I also made them part of my strategic planning team. And so their stories, questions I asked them were, what was it like to grow up in Afghanistan? What was it like? Were you there when the Russian invasion happened? What was that like? And, the Taliban the first time, Taliban the second time. So I was able to capture in their words their experiences, which was very, very powerful. Because if I may, my big why in writing this
Yes,
book,
please tell us.
was really to dispel myths about Islam, Afghans, and Afghanistan, and also to shine the light on the incredible courage and resilience of the Afghan peoples. They've been through so much, and yet they continue really wanting to make their world, their country, a better place. So many of them.
Yeah. Wow, I think that's a great contribution to the world to bring your perspective and shine some light on how you have experienced Afghanistan and the closeness to the people that you had. And you are kind of a spokeswoman for these people to share their voice. They otherwise would be unheard.
I hope so. I hope so. And I still am very close to a number of them. I'm still in contact with a number of them. So that's very special to me.
Yeah, I'm sure it has gotten worse right now. There's just a hope that one day this whole situation is getting better again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, good. So more about that in 2025 in spring. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on living on 5 different continents and experience the world and mentalities and the way of how you were leading teams, how you were empowering women in that specific countries? Is there maybe another story you want to share?
Okay, there's a bunch of stories, I can start off in the late 80s, Brigida. I had the opportunity to live and work in a community up in the mountains, about 10,000 feet up in the mountains of northern Colombia. And that I actually volunteered my time. So this is way back. It's very grassrootsy. But I ended up hooking up with a nurse who was there, and there was a poor barrio close to where we lived, and we ended up doing prenatal classes for those women because they really, to support them in that whole process. of childbearing and birth. I also, later on, when I was project director of an HIV/AIDS surveillance project in Pakistan. I really tried, I should say, to recruit women for my technical team because I had an office with 14 staff in Islamabad and then one in each of the 4 AIDS provincial control programs. And it was really hard to recruit them because there were one in each state, as I said, or province, excuse me. And there were teams at the national level. So I managed to recruit one woman as part of the national team and one woman from one of the provinces. And that was, as I say, that was challenging. And when we put the call out, we had, I got to say, like 1,000 curriculum vitae, 1,000 resumes come to us of people, and then just sifting through them and then going through the process. Anyway, so I did my bit to try to bring women's voices to the table with that project. And we also did workshops related to women and gender and HIV/AIDS and how to empower women in that process. We interviewed female sex trade workers as well as male sex trade workers to understand their needs and how to support them in different parts of the country. It was, as I say, I did my bit. These were broader projects, but as much as I could, I brought women and women's needs into them. And yes, from the grassroots to more, countrywide initiatives in that part of the world.
Wow. What an experience. They add up and add up and add up. So in retrospect, when you're thinking and looking back to all your experiences, how did that impact your life and also influenced your life choices? What did you take away from that? So what is, if I can say, bringing that together, is there a mission that you're following going forward?
There's definitely a mission. And I had this mission, sometimes these things come to you and you're not sure when you got them, but I had this mission before I did this work internationally, and it's evolved, initially it was to help build peace in the world, one woman at a time, because I believe when you help a woman find inner peace, she builds it in her family, her community, her workplace, and it ripples out. And then it came to be helping build peace in the world because you need men and women to build peace. And then it came to be peace and understanding in the world. Because if you view your interactions with others and how you perceive the world through the lens of curiosity and wanting to understand what others believe and why they do what they do, we wouldn't have conflict in the world. Exactly. Because you're coming from a place of understanding and curiosity. So imagine we would not have war. We might have some disagreements, but we would not have the world we have today.
Exactly.
So that mission really shapes, I use that as, I guess, a filter for anything that I do. So for example, I was approached in 2019 by a group out of New York City, or out in New York, and it was called Bold Brave Media, and they wanted to support me to start my own radio show on my own terms, and they would do the intros, the extras, put it up on their platform. Anyway, so I thought, okay, I'm going to call it The Art of Change, and I'm going to interview inspiring women leaders and change makers from around the world. And that's what I did. And so that, again, that's part of, getting powerful, and women who are making an impact, getting their message and their lessons learned out in the world. Another thing was, I'm just trying to think, becoming an ambassador for Female Wave of Change. It's a global social movement started by a woman called Inge Bol in the Netherlands about 7.5 years ago. And we believe that feminine leadership holds the key to promoting a better world, a more conscious, equitable, just, sustainable, and peaceful one. And she approached me just before COVID hit in 2020, and I had met her on LinkedIn a few years before. I had her on my radio show. So anyway, she knew me, and then she approached me and interviewed me with one of her board members, and then at the end of it, offered me to become ambassador for Canada to build this movement in Canada. And I thought about it. I said, I'll get back to you in about a week, because it was a big commitment, because when I signed it also, said that I needed to create a legal entity, which is big because the laws are different in every country and there was no model to do this. So, I did some of my own research and then ended up hooking up with the University of Victoria Business Law Clinic, and one of their students ended up doing research on an appropriate governance model. So anyway, in any event, I launched this on International Women's Day, Female Wave of Change Canada, a national member-based nonprofit on International Women's Day in 2021. And it's still running, and we do monthly gatherings virtually with featured guests. And they're not speaker Q&A. I and my board members co-create the event with the featured guests. So it's a conversation, and the featured guests together with me and or a board member decide on the objectives, the title, and the questions. And then we have breakouts where people get to introduce themselves and take a deeper dive. We also have breakouts so people can share what they're doing to affect change in the world. So that's another one that through that, lens, yes, to help build peace and understanding in the world. And my books, all of them,
Yeah. I want to come back to your books because there's another book. Your book, it's called Learning to Dance with Life, a guide for high achieving women. In this book, you include 7 keys and proven tools and practices to support women to transform their lives from constantly doing and giving to healthy, balanced lives they design and love. And there is one of these keys, it's called listen to and trust in your body's wisdom. And this has become so important nowadays, and also especially for me, because we very often are outer oriented. We always want, the validation of the outside world. And that's not always where you find the truth, and you find it inside. So can you elaborate a little bit on that specific key?
Certainly, be pleased to do that.
Yeah.
So yes, listening to and trusting in our body's wisdom. A lot of times we need tools, Brigitte, to support us to get out of our heads and into our bodies. So when I work with clients, I share these tools, and they're also in my book. And one that's an easy one to start with, if you don't trust in your own body's wisdom, is body scanning. You may have heard of this, and I tend to do it before I get out of bed in the morning. I used to hit the ground running. I don't do that anymore. So, and as you start at the top of your head, and you scan your body from the top of your head down to the tips of your toes. And you just notice if there's any discomfort, any tightness, any pain. And a lot of times you don't even notice these things unless you focus on your body, right? And then you breathe into them and set the intention to release them and let them go. So that's one way to really get into and experience your body. Another way is mindfulness walking meditations. And these are best done out in nature. And instead of going for a walk and thinking about your next meeting, maybe you're giving a performance review to someone and you're thinking about it, or the argument you had with your partner that morning, whatever it is, right? Instead, you know that you totally get into your senses and you feel the breeze on your cheeks. You smell the salt sea air if you're by the sea. You hear the crunch of the leaves underfoot. And every now and again, thoughts will come by, which they always do, and then you put them either in a cloud and watch them float away, or you put them in a bubble and see them float away and disperse. So that's another way to really start paying attention to your body and all the senses. Another one is muscle testing. And I use that to make decisions. And I don't know whether I can stand up, I'll lose part of myself. But anyway, if I may, I use my whole body. And so what I do is I have a decision to make, and I say, okay, to get myself, which is yes and what is no, I say, okay, I am Jill Smith. I am Pamela Thompson. It's a good idea if I do such and so and so. If it's a no, my body doesn't move. If it's a yes, my body moves. And over time, and it's very helpful, right?
Yes,
Because
I
it
know
really
this
helps you.
exercise. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And some people do it with their arms and their fingers. I just find the whole body is helpful. So yeah, so those are a few tools and techniques. There's also a woman called Gloria Wilcox, who I've found out about in the last few years. And she has created something called a feeling wheel. And we use this in my women's circle. I'm part of a women's circle. We meet every 2 weeks. And part of the check-in is, talking about physically how you feel, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. And this feeling wheel, anybody can Google Gloria Wilcox. And she's a psychologist, I believe. And she's got the 6 primary feelings that anybody would experience: sadness, anger, happiness, whatever, in the inner circle. And then there's 2 concentric circles with secondary and tertiary feelings that are related to each of those 6. And it's really helpful if you're not really sure what you're feeling to say, oh, yeah, that's where I am. That's what I'm feeling.
Thank you so much for sharing, Pamela. Yeah, these are really great tidbits because you can take that and right away put it into action. It's a very easy exercises and you get a lot out of it. Yeah. So thank you for that. All right. I would like to kind of bridge leadership, leading, high achieving women to branding. So as a leader, you have worked across continents, culture. I would like you to think about how you would define leadership branding as a term. So how to be perceived as a leader. And based on that, what are some key traits or actions that would help high achieving women create an authentic, impactful brand as leaders?
Okay, can you repeat that again? That's a long one.
Yeah. So how you would define leadership branding? From your experience as working across continents, across cultures, is there a common denominator when it comes to being perceived as a leader? Because as a leader, you're also a role model and you represent something. Yeah. So you're
Totally.
perceived by others in a specific role.
Yes. Okay. Leadership branding. Well, to me, because I believe in feminine leadership, there's a number of attributes or qualities of feminine leaders. And men can have these qualities too. It's just we tend to associate with the feminine. Yeah. So there are things like, in order, from my perspective, to be an effective leader in the world today, when we face so many complex issues like climate change and systemic racism, we need to believe in collaboration, because instead of competition. Because so we need to be able to model that and have tools and techniques to bring people into the circle, if you will, so their voices can be heard. And I think being a facilitator can be really effective to do that. And that's one of the gifts I have and the tools, like I've studied it as well. So being collaborative and having, whenever you're starting something, to really think about who should be at the table and to include as many voices and disciplines and backgrounds and cultures as you can, because then you will get much richer solutions that come out.
It's about diversity and inclusion. Give everyone a voice.
Give everyone a voice. That's right. So collaboration is key. Being authentic. You can't, it's very important to walk our talk. So, it used to be, and I certainly was raised to bring a different person to work than I do in my personal life. And that has changed, I believe. Not to say I'm going to share everything about my personal life with my team, right? But at the same time, it's about being real and, walking your talk. And further to that, it's about emotional intelligence and being aware of your own emotions and how they impact others, but also being aware of others' emotions and noticing them and then coaching them, if you will. For example, if they're part of your senior management team, saying, I noticed you seem to be upset or, firing up more. What's going on? And then they'll, being open to them sharing, well, it's a lot of times it's something in their personal life, and it's very hard to totally separate your personal life. Yeah. The people might be going through a separation, a divorce, their kid's sick, whatever it is. So really having the emotional intelligence and the ability, and even coaching skills are helpful, I believe, as leaders, to really create a safe environment for people so they feel they can share with you, and then create opportunities for them to do that. And really make them feel like they belong. Like all of us, that's the other thing about living and working in a number of countries and continents, is what I believe, and you will know this to be true, I think too, Brigitte, is we're really all the same, most of us. We all want to belong. We want to be respected. We want to be loved. Most of us care about family. So again, if we all viewed each other through that lens, we wouldn't have war, because we'd realize we're really all the same.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing? It doesn't matter what language you speak, what color your skin is, what religion or ethnicity you're from. Really, these are the core elements we have as humans, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's another one. What else? So authenticity, emotional intelligence, collaboration, creativity, thinking out of the box. Not the old paradigms aren't working for us. The old structures we've created are not working for us, and we have to be open to exploring. And that's also the diversity that comes in. Mm-hmm. I remember having a conversation, if I may, when I was working for the federal government in Canada a number of years ago. And I went to lunch with a new director. And I was saying, oh, you must be really excited about, being a director of this new area and having this team. And she said, Pam, I was really excited until I did a brainstorming session with them. And I said, okay, we've got these issues. How are we going to address them? And they came up with the same old. Strike a royal commission, write a white paper. She said, Pam, because they've all been working in government forever and they can't think out of the box. I need to bring in people from away or who have different perspectives. And that's true. I facilitated many multi-stakeholder events in many countries, including Russia, Latin America, and different places. And, and the tools work, the facilitation tools work. And anyway, where was I going with this? I just lost my train of thought.
It's about creativity and old paradigm.
Yeah, and it's enabling people to do things and believing that they can, and then injecting different perspectives and making. And I guess the other thing that I found, and this links to collaboration as well, is that if you go into a collaborative process and you already have an outcome in mind that you're vested in, you will often become positional. So I always say to people when we're starting a multi-stakeholder process or a collaborative process, let go, come in with an open mind, so that we can be as creative as possible and create that safe container where people feel they can share out of the box ideas. So there are a number of things.
That's beautiful what you're saying, because this all sums up to be a compassionate leader at the end of the day. Yeah, opening up the space to be and to belong and to be empathic, and also taking action and finding solutions to bring about a better world as a team. Thank you. There's one more question I have. It's also in regards to high achieving women navigating change and also aiming for a lasting impact, something that is sustainable. What advice would you give on balancing? Because that's difficult for us, because authenticity is always very often in a male-dominated society considered weak. Yeah. So how do you balance authenticity and authority in your leadership brand? And then especially in male-dominated spaces, male-dominated countries, male-dominated industries, or where still this old paradigm rules.
You know what? What I believe is that when we meet, like when I went, for example, when I got into Afghanistan and I was assigned initially the strategic planning team, it's like meeting them as a person, not saying I'm up here and you're down there. So there's something about, and I have been the boss of Muslim men, and really, if you treat them with respect, you listen to them, you provide a safe container. I believe that's so with anyone, and men in different cultures. I mean, every now and again, you might come across someone who challenges you. No doubt, we do. However, this idea of, in the beginning, when you're initiating a relationship, particularly if you're coming from outside as a consultant or you're in charge of a big project, it's very important to meet people at the heart level initially, and, and show interest in them as a person. I think that really helps break the ice. And obviously, if, when I'm in another culture, I respect certain things they do. So in Afghanistan, I scarf and I wear loose clothing. I'm not going to not scarf. I don't cover my face, but I scarf, right? And because you respect. So part of it's respect, showing respect for their cultures, also creating opportunities for them to share. And for example, in Afghanistan, I went to see the minister the second day, and I had to ask her what were the key challenges the country was facing from her perspective, and what issues she felt we should maybe focus on with the strategic plan. And she basically, was very open and said, well, you need to talk to my people, and here's a few. And then she said, within a month, I'd like you to give me to write a document for me on current policy development and planning processes in the ministry and recommendations moving forward. And I was only supposed to be the planning person, but they decided not to hire a policy person because I've done policy work. You can do the policy work. So I had a month to do this. So I could have just written it all myself from my own perspective. But what I did is I went back to the office that had my desk in, and there was a physician sitting beside me, and I said to him, do you have an org structure in English, an organizational chart in English? He said, no, I've got one in local language. So he prints it out, and it's in like Dari, just squiggly wigglies. And I said, okay then. So I looked at the 15 boxes underneath the minister and the deputies, and I said, so what department is that? And he'd say, oh, reproductive health. And so I'd write it in. I'd say, so who's the director? And I'd write in. And so I said, could you take me round to introduce me to them? So he'd take me to a part of the ministry, introduce me, and I'd say, I told them what I was here for. And I said, could I have an hour of your time in the next day or two to interview you about what you think is working, what isn't, and your suggestions to improve policy and planning processes and implementation in the ministry. So basically, within that first month of being there, I'd interviewed the top 15 people, senior managers in the ministry, had an hour or more with them, compiled what they had said to me in a report, and added my own recommendations. And gave them to the minister within the month. And so anytime in the future when people would be saying, so why are you doing that? I'd say, well, remember those interviews I did with, and these were all men. I think, the deputy and the minister were women, believe it or not, at the time. But all the heads of departments were all men. Mm-hmm. And so they were all men, mostly Muslim men. So it was powerful. But again, that's like listening to them rather than coming in as the consultant saying, well, I have all these issues. I don't live in your country. I haven't been here working in your structure. Mm-hmm. Like you have the best view, and certainly I can add recommendations to what, to the report, but I'm not in one to tell you what sort of health system you should have or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's a common project, right? It's not only about your perspective, it's really the perspective of the people who really are in the situation. It's about their country. And I think listening skill is one of the most important ones as a leader, to get the whole picture and to at the end resonate and relate on this visceral level, and then go from there.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. All right. So thank you so much, Pamela. We are coming to the end of our show. I would love to do a quick word wrap with you. I'm throwing out a term, and top of mind, you tell me what you think about it, what you feel about it. Would that be okay for you?
Certainly.
Okay, good. The first word is resilience.
Ability to cope and learn from life's challenges.
Mm-hmm. Culture.
Diverse, colorful.
Mm-hmm. Women empowerment.
Changing the world.
Mm. Inclusion.
Ensuring all voices are at the table and heard.
Oh, it's beautiful. Books.
Opportunities to learn, grow, and explore.
Dancing.
Oh, joy.
And last but not least, brands.
The image, what we stand for, and the image we share with the world.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you so much. Pamela, where can listener find you when they want to get in touch with you?
The best place is pamela-thompson.com, my website. And my Art of Change framework is also on the homepage for download if people are interested. Also on LinkedIn. That's a platform I often use and write on.
All right. Pamela, thank you so much for being my guest today and sharing your wisdom, sharing your journey, sharing all the advice for high achieving women. I love your journey and all the nuggets, the golden nuggets that you have shared with us today. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Brigitte. I've really had fun. I've enjoyed the opportunity to be on your show.
If you enjoyed this episode, hit follow on your favorite app, share it with your network, and leave a quick review. Stay tuned for the next episode and keep shining.